Aloha, friends, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Embodied Healing Self. So today I am here to share with you a beautiful guest from Bethesda, Maryland. Her name is Sherri Divand. She is an intuitive transformational healer, the owner of Intuitive Wellness, and the author of Intuitive Transformation Evolution. She's a Reiki master and teacher, a master hypnotherapist, a registered veterinary technician, hypnobirthing practitioner. She holds a bachelor's degree in health science, and she's also an access bars practitioner. So her mantra is, in order to restore balance, you must bring harmony to the soul. She is also the mother of 3 children who are her world. She's an extreme animal lover, and she's worked as an animal nurse for 18 years. She is passionate about helping women have a better birth experience, to work through birth trauma and infertility, and children as their contribution to the collective consciousness. And she also shares a message of how animals serve as spiritual beacons of support for our livelihood. She considers herself a modern day healer in that as we continue to evolve and shift, and she chooses to remain fluid and flexible while working with others on their healing journey. Her focus is on teaching individuals to take their healing journey into their own hands so that they can rely less on modern medicine, and to understand also how emotions play a vital role in our wellness and how powerful our mindset can be. So as I read this to you listeners, and as the host of the Embodied Healing Self, you can see why she is a perfect guest to have on the show to share with all of you. So it is an honor, Sherri, to have you on the show. So thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so grateful. So we were just laughing a moment ago because I have a foxhound who makes an appearance on shows every once in a while, and she must have known that Sherri was an animal healer because she began talking. Anybody who has a hound knows that they like to talk, and she insisted on being in the room with me during the show. So to all my listeners out there, you might hear her talk a little bit, you might hear her chewing on her toys, but she felt the need to be here, so we are welcoming her in here as well. So Sherri, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. And I know that most of your practice is local in Bethesda, Maryland. And I thought it would be such a great idea to have you on the show, number one, to share your book. And also, as you and I were talking, we know that as a collective, the way that healing is working, and this is even happening in the traditional medicine world, like virtual medicine and care is becoming a thing, that there is this movement that is happening where people are becoming aware, they're getting a deeper understanding or an expansiveness around what is possible for their healing. And sometimes that means that it might be somebody that doesn't live in the place where they live. And so, or it might be through reading a book, like as you have written to share with people. So I wanted to start just by asking you first a little bit more about yourself, because I'm imagining, I found out about you just researching on the internet, and as I was reading about you, I was like, oh yeah, we are on the same wavelength with children and their collective consciousness and animals healing and intuitive wellness. So how did you start to walk on this journey of intuitive wellness? Where did that begin for you?
So it began with animals. Since I was a child, I wanted to be a veterinarian. So I started working in high school at a veterinary hospital. And so that was my focus. I always wanted to have children, but at that point in my life, I wanted to heal animals because I recognized at a young age how important and how vital their role was in our lives. And so that is actually the reason why I learned Reiki and energy work, and all of this healing was for animals. So the focus was, let me learn how to do this alternative mechanism of healing, instead of, because, I was surrounded by working in the intensive care unit for 6-7 years and emergency medicine. I was surrounded and inundated with, medicine and surgeries and all of this. And I thought I had to watch these animals struggle before and after surgery. And I thought there has to be a better way to help heal these animals. And so I learned the energy work to help them. And I found it to be so profound, and not only that, but how much they wanted it. And it was through that period that I discovered my ability to communicate with them and figure out what it is that they wanted and needed. And so it wasn't actually until I had children. I started a little bit young, so I was 23 when I had my first, and in a different way. And I thought to myself, gosh, I really would like to create a better environment for my children as they grow up. And I started to really care a little bit. And so I started opening my journey to working with people. And so it was kind of the animals came first, and then I started working with people through having children. That kind of opened up my heart a little bit, because I had that mentality of, oh, people are gross, let me work with just animals. But then I realized that, people need healing too, so not just the animals. And so then so now I work with both. I work with both animals and people.
I think that's wonderful, because I'm sure many listeners on the show would agree. And I've been coming across a lot of animal healers and intuitives lately, and, welcoming a family member into our lives just a year ago, this puppy, who we've had dogs before, but there's a story behind her. She is very much like the dog that I had before, who left the day before she came into our life. But yeah, animals are our healers. They are it's like Mother Earth, right? I mean, they are our healers. And so their healing is so important. And I love that there are people out there that are doing this type of work to heal these animals, because they are highly energetically empathic and sensitive and taking on a lot for us.
Oh yeah.
And they are such a vital role, like, as you said, to our livelihood. And yeah, they're just wonderful. And so I love that you're doing both, because I do believe that we co-create these relationships with animals. So what type of work, so you mentioned a couple things that you do in your business, and I hear that you work a lot with women around birth. You do hypnotherapy. You're also an access bar practitioner. What is the work that you do in your clinic? What do you primarily see or work on? Or do you get all sorts of people that come through, or what is the primary focus of your work?
So it's pretty widespread. So I do all of those things, but I would say so many people are having this, what we call awakening. So they're, 20s, 30s, 40s, and they've had this, what they refer as this dull existence. They go to work, they come home, and they're just frustrated and thinking there has to be more than this. And so they come to me and they're like, what is my purpose? That's everyone's question to me. What's my purpose? Why am I here? There has to be more than just this matrix that we are living in from day to day, going and struggling and competing with each other. And so I get excited about that, because I'm like, oh my gosh, let me tell you. And so so I would say the most popular, so let me first start by saying, when I started energy healing, it was just that. So people come to me and I would just do their healing. So I would do Reiki, quantum touch, a variety of different things. And I noticed that I was getting messages while I was doing it. So when I was in their energy field and I had their permission, I started to intuitively tap in, and I started getting messages for them. I started seeing things for them that were pertinent to why they came to see me at that time. So they're struggling about something, and I would somehow get the answers as to why, or some sort of explanation. Whether that be past lives, current situations, childhood trauma, whatever it may be. And I was afraid, and I talk about this in my book, I was afraid to tell them that, because I thought, oh, are they going to think I'm a little bit nutty. And so they would respond poorly. And so I was very careful about who I told that information to. And what I noticed is once I opened that platform, more and more people started coming to me for the information. They wanted the information more than they wanted the healing. And I had to reflect on that, because my purpose was not to give intuitive readings, right? That's not my sole interest aspect of it, and how I can help people move forward on their spiritual journey, whether that be physical, emotional, healing. And so I had to sit down and think about how I was going to move forward, because I didn't want that to be the primary focus. And I have people call me all the time and ask if I do intuitive readings, and I say no, I'm sorry, and I refer them out. I say what I really focus on is healing, and the intuitive information is helpful, but I feel like to have a full balance and help people find that balance is a combination of the healing and the information. So you getting the information is wonderful, but if you don't balance your chakras, you don't realign, and you don't have the healing done, then it's not really, in my opinion, it's not going to help the person, and as much as they could if they had both. And so I would say the most popular thing that I have right now is a combination of intuitive guidance and healing in a session. So they get the healing, and then we sit down for about 30 minutes and we talk about all the information that I got. And then from there, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of my focus is, although I love seeing people, I don't want them to be bound to me. I don't want them to have to come to see me every couple of weeks in order to move forward, right? I don't want them to rely on me. I want to be a support. So what I offer for every person that I see is, okay, I let them reflect, and then we think about what it is that they can do moving forward to help themselves, so that I just become kind of a passenger in their journey, so what they can do on their own moving forward.
I love that. I love all of that. I love that you shared, there's sort of this dual purpose that we go through on this journey, where there is time and space for the opportunities for us to seek healing kind of outside of ourselves, right? Through energy work or through, nutrition or herbal medicine or whatever. And energy work is a huge part of it, because the energy fields are sort of a deeper layer of the healing that is needed. And then there is this other part also where there's some self-responsibility that in order to evolve, we take part in our own healing, which is what the embodied healing self is all about. The embodied healing self, the whole purpose of it is to access that embodied healer within you, so that you can access your soul's wisdom, your soul's highest expression, your potential, your purpose, as people are coming to you for. So I really hear you saying that the gateway to working with people is really through healing their energy fields first. And then as we start to do that, as we start to work with the energy field and sort of clean it out or help it align a little bit. The last episode that I recorded was building a solid foundation through spiritual growth. And I talked a lot about building that solid foundation and becoming a vibrational match in your body for your soul, like becoming that energetic vibrational match to embody your soul in its healthiest expression. And so what I want to share with the listeners that are listening here, because I often get asked, like, well, what do you think about Reiki? What do you think about energy work? What do you think about, I always get asked the question, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And the answer is that all of those things are wonderful. And then the next sort of layer on the journey is the willingness to take on that self-responsibility. And we need a teacher in this. We need a teacher or a mentor, or it's easier. And if we do this, and we are created to coexist, which is why having a relationship with a healer and a teacher and a mentor, and you do both, as do I, having that relationship with somebody who heals and teaches is that co-creative relationship where we then empower them, as you are doing with the people who come to see you, empowering them to become their own embodied healer, because that is how they ultimately get and receive the highest expression of their soul's wisdom. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about your book, because for the listeners here, I think that the book is a great gateway to this information. So tell me a little bit about the book and the message that it shares.
Sure. So I would say it's about 10 years worth of my own spiritual journey. Have created information and the ability take of kind of repeating the same things over and over and over to people. I also have a spirit circle that I offer in my area once a month. And then I teach a lot of different classes, intuitive healing, intuitive development, and so forth. And so and everybody was just so, they were saturating themselves with this information, and they were so open to it, inviting and asking more and more. And I just felt like, gosh, so many people need this information. They don't, when you're an intuitive healer, sometimes you forget that a lot of people don't know what you know, right? So it's knowledge, it's everyday knowledge to me. It's like wait, you don't know what that is? They don't know anything that I'm telling them. So they're just like, oh my gosh, tell me more. So I'm actually working on a book for about children, because that's a lot of my focus, right? That people needed right now was the information that I was giving repeatedly over and over again. So I sat myself down and I literally wrote this book in 3 weeks. I just dedicated my time. I mean, I literally didn't play with my children. My husband was like, I haven't seen you. I just focused on getting the book done, so that I could get the information out there to people, so that, it could be anyone from who doesn't have any knowledge, or somebody that's kind of just starting on their spiritual journey, to those that, are. And so I feel like it kind of meets all levels of development. And so the primary focus of the book really is, how do our emotions affect our well-being? And I don't think people realize, number one, how they affect us, but how powerful our mind is, and also how much control we have over our well-being. We have the ability to decide how long we're going to be angry, or how long we're going to be fearful about something. It's our choice. But people don't want to put the responsibility on themselves. They want to put the responsibility on everyone else around them. And sometimes they get stuck and they don't know how to move forward. And so my book is recognizing that. I have this metaphor in the book that I created, is called the emotional high rise. And so if you think about a high rise, like a multi-million-dollar condo or something, a high rise in New York City. And each floor is a decade. So we have the bottom floors all the way to the top. The penthouse is reaching enlightenment and the ability to then help others. But our emotions, going up the high rise, is our ability to take ourselves out of that fear. And then we take ourselves up each level, and as we move up the levels, we are really able to work on ourselves and release. It's a lot of it is just accepting and releasing, and forgive people. Why are you still angry about something that happened to you 20 years ago? Let it go. It's about letting it go, releasing and letting go, because that people don't understand that the emotions that we have is energy. So that energy gets trapped in our body. And if we are angry about this, and we're frustrated about this, and we have anxiety about this, and we have guilt about this, and you stretch it your entire life, right? You get to a point where you have backache will manifest further, then those physical ailments turn into serious chronic issues. And the next thing you know, you're debilitated. And if you so many people that I've worked with that said, okay, I'm ready. I help them release those emotions a little bit at a time. Next thing you know, all their pain is gone and they're living a completely different life. And so my focus is, how can I put this information out there so people can do it for themselves without having to be in my office with me, 3, 4, 5 months. I have people that I've been working with for several years now still, but the transformation that they have gone through is absolutely incredible. And so how can I put that in a way that people can read it, understand it, and then follow through with it, right? Because you could read something and resonate with it, but you have to actually do it. And so you have to put the responsibility on yourself. And I'm giving is something that they can do and it resonates with them, then perhaps they will actually follow through with it. They'll get excited, right? Because they're like, oh, I have the power to do that.
Yeah.
I can actually do that. Then they get excited about it and then they actually will do it, right? And so that's really what it's, what your focus on everybody else in the world. You know, stop looking at everybody else as somebody that you should look at everybody else as what I like to refer to as teammates. We're all on the same team. We're all trying to move forward. We're all trying to do better. Why do we have to compete with the person? Why do we have to put people down next to us? We should just compare and we should combine resources and imagine what we could do if we did that. What we could create, what kind of world we would live in. And that's why the children are incredible. Their openness, their lovingness, their ability to look at people in a way that is just with compassion and they look into your soul, right? They don't see the exterior. They don't see the angry, grumpy old man. They see the heart that's within him and they just, you know, and they saturate them with love. And next thing you know, the person is smiling for the first time in 30 years or whatever. You know, they have this ability, this innate ability to just change the trajectory of the world if we just let them. Because the older generations walking around are so set in their ways that they're not willing to budge. So if we can change the generational gap slow for the futures. So it's the book is really a combination of empowering people to take their wellness journey in their own hands, understanding how emotions really drive their wellness, and their ability to move forward in a positive way. And then perhaps shifting their perspective on how they look at the world and those around us. And then once we're able to do all of that, then we can evolve in a more mindful way, in a more compassionate way. And how children are important, animals. I talk about animals in the book and how important they are for our well-being. And so it's a lot of information, but I hope that I was able to write it in a way that's very easy to understand. It's an easy read. You know, my 14-year-old son could pick it up and read it and understand it, right? So it's in a way that is very fluid and understandable. I hope. I hope anyway.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So I just want to bring the listeners in a little bit and into some resources. So chances are, if you're listening to this show, you are probably already somebody who's already sort of in that vibration or frequency of there's maybe the subconscious knowing of this ability for all of this, the healing and an understanding of the larger integrated network that we are all a part of, as you said, being a team player in this. And also just there's this part of self-responsibility where we begin to understand that our healing, our personal healing is not just about us. It is actually selfless because it becomes a ripple effect and we can see it in our relationships with people, with our children, in our marriage and our work, in every way, when we begin to tap into that inner wisdom that we all have. And so I want to share for the listeners on the show, many of the things that you just talked about. I would invite you to check out her book that's on Amazon. And the name of the book is Intuitive Transformation Evolution. Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Intuitive Transformation Evolution. I myself am very interested in picking up this book. So I'm going to be going on Amazon. And, I'm one of those people who has like a stack of books and I read a little bit between 3 books at a time.
Me too.
Yeah, always a student, always learning. But I have done some shows on this particular show on some of the topics that you discussed, which I just want to talk about really quick. 2 weeks ago, I recorded a show on healing core wounds of rejection and essential goodness about my own journey where I was confronted in a very painful experience in an interaction with another person. And when you talk about team player, when we do this own inner deep healing work, we're able to see and have gratitude for those people and those difficult experiences because we realize that they are a part of our evolution. And then I did a show on consciously parenting through fear and pride. And my particular story was about a traumatic event that my daughter was a part of, where the only thing she showed was compassion. She didn't even show fear, right? So I say that to say that there are also resources on this show, the cycles of self-sabotage, and talking about that emotional piece. So I want to move forward with two things. Number one, I'm actually recording later on today around the topic of spiritually gifted children, and how that shows up, which I find interesting because we're recording on the same day. That is just a really big alignment piece for me too, because I am currently writing a book on exactly that. It took you 3 weeks. It's taking me 3 years because my journey has changed so much over the last 3 years. But you work with birth trauma. You might be familiar with HELP syndrome. So I had HELP syndrome with the birth of my first daughter, and it was a near-death experience. So that was sort of my rebirth. And then in my own journey through, because I don't know how much you know about my journey, and I know the listeners know a little bit, but in my own journey, I became a health coach because I lost my health after having liver failure. And then at the peak of eating clean and as a fitness instructor, so working on the physical body, I had a second health crisis. And that second health crisis was all about my energy body, my emotional body, and my connection to source. And that's what that second health crisis 5 years ago was all about, which sort of then led me down to this path. So I want to ask you the emotional piece of it, because that is really where you mentioned that sort of the depth of a lot of healing is, that the mindset is so important, because on a physical level, our bodies, they store trauma on a cellular level based on they store emotional trauma. This is in a book that I refer to, Waking the Tiger. So this is a really huge part of it. And the question I want to ask around that is, what patterns do you notice, maybe underlying top emotions do you notice in the people that come to work with you that hold people back from their own healing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say fear. Fear is one of the biggest emotions people hold on to, and it really is debilitating because it stops them in their tracks and they don't move forward. So of course, those listeners that understand the chakras understand that the lower root chakras, sacral chakra, solar plexus, those are all affected by the fear, because it's our primal ability to move forward without the fear of feeling secure, secure and supported by others that surround us. And so a lot of people come to me that are stuck and they hate their job, or they're in a relationship that is narcissistic, and they don't know how to move forward because they're afraid. They're afraid of the unknown. Well, what happens if I quit my job and try something new? Or what happens if I leave my relationship and nobody comes into my life ever, ever again, that I'm worthy of? And so it's all about releasing that fear. And so the way to do that is really, what I tell people is, just don't think about fear at all. Let's think about what it is that you want. So don't worry about how you're going to get there. Let's think about what it is that you want. What is that and I use the word perfect loosely because I don't really want people to think of anything as perfect. But what is your ideal situation? What is that ideal job that you would like? Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about anything. Just what does that ideal relationship look like? And then you meditate on it. I'm a big believer in visualization and manifesting. So manifesting what it is that you want. Your emotional mindset to only encourage what you want and what you desire. Then what happens is you raise your vibration, and then you then attract that same vibration around you. And so that could only bring what it is that you desire, and sometimes even better, something that you hadn't thought of before. And that's a lot of what I talk about in my book as well, is you have to attempt to manifest things that align with your purpose, right? So you can't say, well, Sherri, that doesn't work because I've been doing the lottery for years and I'm not winning, but I'm trying to manifest it. And what I explain to them is it has to align with your purpose. So if that doesn't align with your what you're here to learn, let's say finances, then you're not going to get a windfall of money. If you have come here to learn about financial stability in a way that you have to work for your money. So your desires and your dreams have to resonate somewhat with what it is that you've come here to do. Now, I know that a lot of people don't know what they have come here to do. That's why they come to see me. And I understand that, but your dreams have to be within reason. And so it has to be something that is attainable with the resources that you have at that point. Doesn't mean that your resources won't change, and doesn't mean that you won't get more than you have in that moment. But let's start with what you can attain at that moment. And so if you delete the fear and you reset, this is what happens when I work with women on having a better birth experience. If you are continuously afraid throughout your entire pregnancy, and you walk into that hospital in a fight or flight response, so you're terrified, you have catecholamines running through your body, you have tension in your body. Tension creates fear, and fear creates the pain, and it's a cycle. And so if you cut that cycle by thinking only positively and visualizing not a perfect birth experience, but one that's better, a calmer, more peaceful experience, tapping into hundreds of thousands of years ago, when birth used to be completely different, before all of this changed, then you can then reset your future in a more positive way, so your body doesn't have that reaction. Because if your mind tells your body, I'm going to have a terrible experience, whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be birth related, I'm never going to get this job, I'm never going to meet the man of my dreams, then you are then setting yourself up for that reality, because your mind tells your body then reacts, your vibration adapts to whatever frequency that aligns with, and most likely, yes, if it's negative, it's going to be lower vibration, yes, right? And that's the reality that you then created for yourself. And then people get upset and they get bitter about it. And so if you cut off the lower vibrating emotions and only accept positive, people don't realize that they do this on a daily basis without realizing. I do something silly and I'm like, oh, Sherri, you're such an idiot. And then, like something really silly. And then immediately I self-correct, right? So even I do it and I say, no, I'm not an idiot. I just did something silly right then. And then I completely shift my mindset. So you can do that for something as silly as, stubbing your toe, or, or something as big as, the test that you're going to take. Or the job that you're applying for. So you only think positively. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I love how you share, because I really do believe that we are the authors of our own story. Perception is reality. So we can create. And by the way, I just want to say, we're not bypassing the reality of this. We're choosing to acknowledge our belief in the current situation, and then we're choosing to shift it. And in the 2 episodes ago, the one I recorded around a core wound, at the end of the show, what I shared is what through all of the meditation and healing that I did from this being on the receiving end of a very uncomfortable experience with another person, is that the energy that I came into the space with was exactly the energy that I was rejected from the space with. In other words, but the thing is it was subconscious. Mm-hmm. There was a subconscious belief. So I think there's kind of 2 parts to this. There is a part where, some of this work is subconscious, which is where the energy healing can also really help and sort of bring things up, because we may not know. And I don't know if this happens with you a lot, but often when I'm working with women, as we start to peel the layers, I get asked the question, is it normal to not really have known that this was what was holding me back for so long? Because sometimes they come from subconscious beliefs, or most of the time, I should say, almost every time, from our childhood, right? Yeah. Some sort of traumatic event that we created a belief to protect ourselves. And so, yeah, I love that you're sharing that. And then also you share that, I just sort of want to paint a picture for the listeners that we can see this happening in our energetic field and also in our physical body. So in other words, when we talk about there is a frequency or a vibration to each emotion, to our beliefs, to what's happening in our physical body. When we talk about manifestation, there are manifestations happening in our physical body too, like pain, discomfort. I mean, there's also joy too. So all of these things that we experience are all an energetic frequency. And so what I hear you sharing that I really love, and I'm 100% in alignment with, is that when we start to become aware of this, and usually as we start to become curious, we become more aware and more sensitive, that it is in that moment where we can choose. When we have the awareness, we can just choose a different belief. And we're not bypassing it. It's just that we can become aware that we can become empowered, I should say, to choose differently. We can take the energy of the fear, and I think of fear as like the bowl of all negative emotions. Yeah. It's like the opposite of love, right? And so we can take that energy, there's an energy to it, and we can sort of transmute it into the thing that we want to create. And I think that there are a lot of thought leaders that talk about this in a different way. And you and I are able to start with physical body healing first and see how this shows up there. And then there's that part where we also empower and show people. And what we want the listeners to understand is that they have the ability to do this within their own energy field as well, to create and manifest by living in that vibration or frequency. And that it involves healing, and it involves trust, and it involves, choosing differently. And so I love that you do both, that you help clear the energy fields, and you help also empower people to become their own healer. So I wanted to, just as we sort of wrap up, Go ahead. There's a little bit of a delay. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that it's empowering to help people realize that they have the ability to shift their timeline. And so it could be something as simple as remaining angry, because anger is another one, right? That's a big one. Fear and anger kind of resonate together. And so if you choose to be angry at someone, then you can be in this decade of anger and fear for as long as you choose. It's your choice. Oftentimes the other person is already moved on, living their life. They could care less, but you're so angry at them that you don't realize that you are creating this atmosphere of anger, fear, and resentment, all of these things. And it's your choice. So you stay angry as long as you want, but that will be your reality. But if you can recognize it, shift your timeline a little bit, and one thing I explain in my book is, and this was life-changing for myself, right? Because I was one of those people that when I grew up, I was like, people called me an elephant. And I never forget, I would stay angry at people for a very long period of time. And what I realized is when I saw James Van Praagh talk about how we are spirits having this human experience, what I realized is we can't be resentful or angry at people for what they do, because we are not we're not walking in their shoes. We have no idea what they've been through to get them to the point for them to do whatever it is that they did to you. We have no idea the trauma they've been through. We have no idea the emotional abuse they may have endured. And so we can't judge them. And so what I tell people is don't worry about forgiving this person in this time and space. What you do is you forgive their soul, because you know that their soul would never do anything to hurt anybody. They come from love, right? And so if you can remove yourself from the physical and just rise above it a little bit and say, you know what, I am upset with what you did, but I'm going to forgive you. I'm forgiving your soul. And I'm moving on from this. How wonderful would that be if everybody just did that? We wouldn't have these wars. We wouldn't have this this fierce competition with people, right? Because we would be able to just let it go. Yeah. And then how wonderful would that be, right?
Yeah. And that's exactly actually what I talked about in my podcast. The words I use, I do a meditation and I call in my higher self and the other person's higher self. And then we have this, exchange of energy from because higher self is unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
And it always ends in compassion and forgiveness every time. And so what I want to say to the listeners is that these, and as I hear you saying, like, it's your choice, right? So we may not be able to physically communicate and resolve things the way that we think that we want to in the human form sometimes, right? Like, we may not be able to have a conversation. We may not hear the words that we think we want to hear and resolve it. But what we can do is resolve it within our own body, our own existence. And that is where the tool that I use, the higher self meditation, where I call in sort of divine source and higher, you said kind of rise above it. Like, that is where the real healing is. And in my experience, I mean, energetic cords can be cut, relationships can be healed on energy planes that don't have to happen with our physical conversation. And I think that's really powerful.
Right.
And even people who have left this, they're in transition to another lifetime. People have left this experience. We can heal those relationships too. Because I've had people say that to me too. Well, I can't say what I wanted to say because the person is gone. Well, yes, you can, because the healing is within you.
You can.
Yeah. So I love that. So I want to kind of circle back to the third thing that you shared in your introduction and sort of end the show in this way, just kind of leaving it on the note of the importance of allowing children to be our teachers, to elevate into this sort of collective consciousness that they are actually already in this, they're already coming in at this frequency where they have this knowing of the healing that is needed. And I think as parents in our generation, we are in a space where, again, we know we can choose. Like, everything that our mothers and grandmothers did before us as mothers put us in a position to be more empowered in this world where now we can choose differently. And so I want to leave the listeners, because I have a lot of listeners that are mothers. And by the way, you can be a mother you can be an auntie to somebody else's child. You can have mother energy. You can be a mother to your pet. We are talking about mother energy here. I want to just allow you to share your belief around the insight that you have on what this really means that will lead us into the next book that you're going to share.
Okay, great. This is actually my favorite topic. So I'm really excited to talk about children because, first let me start by telling you the reason why this kind of came to be. So I have 3 children, and they're all so vastly different, right? And so it was all about this struggle, this internal struggle that I had with parenting them. How do I parent 3 completely different types of children? And that opened the window for me to really discover a lot more, right? Why are they the way they are? Why are they so different? And why does one parenting style not work for all of them? I literally have to parent 3 children 3 completely different ways. And that's exhausting. So not a lot of people are willing to do that. So I started thinking about, gosh, parents want their children to fit into this tiny little box, and they have to do this, and they have to be this way, and they have to listen, and they can't do this, and they can't do that. And these children are these amazing, vast souls that they're just bursting with love and excitement and all of these amazing things to do. This tiny little body, and being unable to really articulate what it is that you're trying to say or what it is that you want to do, and not understanding no. And those parents don't have the patience nor the time or the willingness to really sit down and think about and get to know their child and figure out why they are the way they are. One of the biggest lessons I had from one of my guys was when I had my second child, because I'll say my first was, I call him my little Zen Buddha. He was amazing. He never did anything. I mean, he was so easy. But my second came along and I was like, what the heck is this? Like, he was just we called him the Tasmanian devil because he was just like running around and he never got tired and he didn't like the word no and he was completely different. And my guides told me, Sherri, don't break him. And I was like, what does that mean? But what I realized is, and through my learning, willingness to learn and open myself up, I realized that he's the way that he is for a reason. And so what they mean by don't break him is don't shut him down. Don't mold him into what you want him to be or what the first child was like, because they all come in with a set of skills that they need later in life to do what it is that they're here to do. And so it's our job as parents to get to know our children and figure out what works. And, this might work with this one, but this one needs an explanation. They don't like to hear the word no. And the reason for that is they want to know why. Explain it to me, and then talk to in a different way, because they all have these amazing skills. And so I talk about this in my book. I believe that there are different types of children, and this is nothing new. It's not like I came up with this. We have the indigos, which are the generation that I'm in, and then we have the crystal children, and then we have the star children, and then we have the rainbow. And so I am blessed with having one of each. So each one of those types of children are the way they are. They're suited with this energetic armor, right, for a very specific purpose. And so I talk about that in my book. But the next book that I want to talk about is the generation that's about to, well, it's not a generation. So many people know about divine children yet, because I'm just exploring this, and I don't believe that many people are aware of this group of children coming in between 2019 and 2022. And they are just off the charts energetically armored with this ability to connect with, well, not only with all of the other divine children, but they have the combination of all the other past children, the crystal, the rainbow, and the star, and whatever other hybrids there are. And they are just like jam-packed with the ability to really transform and really bring us into the new earth, or whatever people want to call it, where we're headed. They will make sure that they, what they describe themselves as this army, but when you think about army, you think about, soldiers with guns and rifles and all sorts of things. But when I look at them, they are an army. I can see them when I close my eyes. I visualize there's thousands of them, but they're coming together. They're holding hands, and they have this beautiful halo of white light around them. They are an army of love. And so they're coming here to really just change the vibration of the earth. And so, not to say that the other children before them aren't already doing that, but they're kind of just like, that anchor that comes in behind and just swoops in and just completely changes the way we live and the way we think and the way we love. And so that's the book that I'm working. Well, I have several books, but that's one of the books that I'm writing. And then the other passion that and then the other one, actually the one that I'm writing next, because the Divine Children is ongoing. I don't have all the information yet, so I can't actually write it. I just have stuff that I'm putting aside. But the one that I'm writing next is a continuation of the book that I just wrote, and it's for teens. It's focused on teens, because that's another, I know I say children, but teens are really important to me, because they are the ones living right now that are saying, I've had enough. I don't agree with this. They're going into the workforce saying, this doesn't make sense to me. They are the entrepreneurs. They're the ones but they're also the ones that are struggling, because they're not aligning with the way that the world operates right now. And so they are kind of lost, and they know that they have they look at things differently. They look at the world differently. They're very empathetic. So they're very sensitive. And so they're taken advantage of. And this book is helping these children, and they signed up for a very challenging life, because they're the ones that are really going to make the biggest shift. So they pave the way. They make the shifts for better leaders. And then the younger generations are going to come in and kind of continue the trajectory. And so that is the focus of helping teens who are spiritually inclined and open to this, help them adapt and move forward in a way that is not so scary. Right. Yeah. And letting them know that they're not alone, and they're not actually the weird ones. They walk around thinking there's something wrong with them, or they're weird, or they don't fit in. When actually I tell them, you are beautiful and you are unique and you're so special. And when I tell them these things, they want to cry because they've never had anybody tell them that. And so they never thought of themselves that way. And I'm like, you are so special because you're the one that's going to make the change. You're brave that you signed up to do this so that it could help so many people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to just add to that if you're a parent of one of these children, as I am, two of these children, I mean, they are my healers in the way that I was living in a very low vibration in my life, but that wasn't my sole purpose. I was out of alignment, which was why I had the near-death experience when my daughter was born. I was military, engineer, totally in the box, right?
Yeah.
So in the box. And I wouldn't have chosen differently had it not been for my children. And I honestly, that was just part of my journey. And every step of the way, I would have second guessed myself about the experiences I was having if it weren't for my children, because children just come from love. They don't have baggage. They just share the world that they're in, and it's just their truth. We are the ones that create out of fear an alternate reality. And so what I want to say to the parents here is that when we do this, when we open ourselves up to receiving what it is that our children are here to share with us, we also begin to heal at a deeper level. Absolutely. And not just ourselves, but generations before us, and generations after us. And it is we are living in such a powerful time in all of this. So I really want to thank you for sharing that. And I want to say, and I just want to kind of bring in, the other side to that is that it doesn't mean that it's always easy, but remember we get to shift, right? But we get to shift that reality. For example, my oldest daughter, nothing traditional in the medical world worked for her at all. People literally told me, we don't understand. We don't know what to do. She was here to partially teach me that. She led me down the path to alternative, because I was a military person. I had traditional healthcare. What about herbs? What about energy medicine? No, none of that stuff works with me because I'm living in this different vibration and frequency where that stuff doesn't work for me. There's a whole new way of being and living in the world where we heal with energy and food from the earth and our mindset, which is energy and things like that. So I want to say that to the listeners to really just encourage them to just slow down and listen. And just sometimes what I see happening is we get so caught up in the busyness that we miss what's actually really happening. And, who our children really are. And I also want to say to the listeners that what they show us is also a small reflection of us as parents, which I think is a wonderful gift. So thank you for sharing all of that. I look forward to, we may have to record another show as that comes out. I look forward to sharing more about that. I'm super passionate about it. And also just thinking would it be so cool to have a retreat in the mountains somewhere with, parents and children, I don't know, to sort of integrate that healing at a deeper level.
Yeah.
It'd be so cool. So Sherri,
well, we could talk about this in the next interview, but that's one of the things that I want to create is a school called Divinely Guided. So it'll be a school that, not an academic school, but a spiritually based school in the next few years, where parents and children can come and learn more about what their gifts are and really understand. So I look forward to that.
I love that. And I will definitely want to, just stay in touch with that. So Sherri, I know that you and I both have sessions that we're stepping into. I just want to thank you for your time. And for the listeners, I will share her book, Intuitive Transformation Evolution. And I will share her website just in case you want to reach out to her or follow her. She also at Facebook is Intuitive Wellness Center, intuitivewellnesscenter.com, and Instagram, Intuitive Wellness Living. So I just want to thank you so much for your time. Do you have any last words to share with our listeners? Awesome. Well, thank you.
No, just thank you for having me. And yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your grace with us on the show today. I'm so grateful and look forward to connecting again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.